Good morning, and welcome to this first plenary session following the opening session that I hope was up to your expectation. Nicola De Michelis is my name, and I will have the pleasure to moderate this session that will be dedicated to look at the Territorial Just Transition Plans. You will hear from the Commission where we are with the preparation of those plans and what are the main issues that are emerging. And you will then have the possibility to listen to some of the experiences that member states and regions have faced in preparing those plans from Czechia, Poland, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Let me briefly introduce the speakers that are today with us. First, Sander Apper is also known as Mr. JTF in the European Commission. You probably know him. Then we have with us Zdeněk Karasek, the Governor's Deputy for Coal Regions in Transition from the region of Moravia and Silesia in the Czech Republic. We have Roman Shalemay, the Mayor of Wałbrzych in Lower Silesia in Poland. Selma Zorgman-Schippers, Program Manager from the province of Groningen in the Netherlands, and Michael Stiel-Ogesen, Project Manager at the Green Hub in Denmark. I will also take this opportunity to tell you that we are launching a new website, and we are reinforcing technically. You see the address on the screen, and are reinforcing technical assistance to the platform. And with this, I will pass the floor to Sander to tell us a bit where we are with the preparation of the plans. Sander.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you here at already the 5th meeting of the Just Transition platform. And as you can see on my first slide, when it comes up, we made a lot of progress, or I should say you made a lot of progress in the preparation of the Territorial Just Transition Plans since the last time that we spoke. So you will see a little graph that shows that by now almost all member states have shared drafts of their Territorial Just Transition Plans with us in the European Commission. 9 member states have by now also submitted these plans formally into the system, one already in a revised almost final version, and several others are almost ready to do that as well. So we are accelerating. This is good news, and we really invite you to share the drafts or update the drafts with us as soon as you can. In the next slide, you can see that we already made a lot of progress on the content of these plans. For instance, the geographical scope of the Just Transition Fund has been now clarified in most of the member states. Only in a few, we are still fine-tuning this discussion of where the Just Transition Fund should be focused. In the past months, we received a lot of your questions, detailed questions about what exactly can be funded by the Just Transition Fund, what kind of information is needed in the plans, for instance, for those plans who plan to invest in productive investments in large enterprises or in activities from the ETS system, and we have replied to these questions. So a lot of these uncertainties are being cleared. But there are still a couple of outstanding issues that we see and that we would like to be still improved in some of the cases before the plans are finalized. And I will mention 4 of them. And the first one on the next slide is about skills and about people, because we know that the Just Transition is really about people and places most affected. And as Marc Lemaitre said in the opening session just now, we really need to see a clear focus on people and on skills in each of the Territorial Just Transition Plans. This is very important. This is really a key pillar of the Just Transition Fund. When it comes to skills, I want to mention as well that the analysis in the plans should be based on a skills forecast. This is because each territory will really be impacted by the transition, even in those cases where there are no massive closures foreseen. And this is really where a skills forecast can help you to really identify what would be the impact. On Thursday, by the way, in this event, we have a session on skills that can also help you strengthen this dimension in your plans. Then on the next slide, another shortcoming that we are still seeing in a couple of cases when it comes for plans for coal regions is that the coal phase out really needs to be very clear. Commissioner Simpson told us this morning that coal will be pushed out of the energy mix in Europe. There is no question about this. She also told us that the Commission will not deviate from the energy and climate targets. This is why in all of the territorial just transition plans, each of them should start from a description of a transition process. We need to see at the national level how the 2030 and 2050 targets will be met. And we need to see also in the case of coal regions what impact this will have on the territories in the near future, so by 2030 or before. And this is really an essential element that we need to see, that we need to be clear about before we can talk further about the content of the plans. Next slide, please. Also in the carbon intensive regions, these requirements are there. So also for carbon intensive regions, those are regions heavily dependent on the carbon intensive industries. We need to see in the plans what the expected transformation is that will happen in those industries in the region and what impact this will have. In this context, I think the session that will follow lunch today about the working groups from the Just Transition platform on carbon intensive regions could also be very helpful. And by the way, at the same time, there will be also a session dedicated to coal regions this afternoon. And then finally, on the next slide, this was also mentioned very much in the opening session, the partnership principle. This is not just a principle that we need to see on paper. We really need to see that trade unions in particular are involved in all of the discussions of the Just Transition platform, but also youth need to be around the table when the future of their region is being discussed, and the same goes for local authorities and for NGOs. In this 3-day event, you will see a lot of representatives from the trade unions, from youth, from NGOs, and from local authorities in the various sessions, and we in the Commission really expect them to also have their role at the national and the regional level when the Just Transition Fund is being prepared and also when it is being implemented, which will happen in the near future. So this is it in terms of introduction on my side. I'm looking very much forward to the experiences that we will hear from the other people in this panel and also as well to your questions afterwards. I see that the moderator is rejoining, but perhaps I can then step in and give the floor immediately to Mr. Karasek for the first presentation coming from Czech Republic.
Okay, thank you. If I can ask you to share presentation. Yes, here it is. Let me present you our experience with the Just Transition plans and preparation and implementation in our region of Moravia Silesia. This is one of 3 Czech co-regions which are included in the National Just Transition Plan. Next slide, please. And here you can see our main problems, which are similar, I think, to many industrial areas like ours. It is about brain drain, higher unemployment, some effects on coal miners and polluted air, brownfields and so on. So very similar problems. Next slide, please. I must say that Just Transition Initiative and Just Transition plans came just in time because last and this year, the last coal mines have been closed in our region. So it is very hot topic in our region of Moravia Silesia. Next slide, please. Here you can see that after 250 years since discovery of coal in our region, and after, let's say, 30 years of transformation process, which began in 1990s, we are just now in the final phase of coal phase out. We are glad to participate in this initiative of coal regions in transition, and we are partners since 2018. And we also prepared our regional development strategy as a basis for this transformation plan. Next slide, please. We have a vision for this transformation. We call it new energy to change the region, and we mean it both technically, like new sources of energy, but also new energy with regard to motivation of people to change this region. We prepared our plan on the basis of a regional strategy, as I mentioned. Next slide, please. And as it was mentioned by Sander, it was prepared with a real broad partnership and participation of all key players in the region. You can see some of them here, like universities, students, NGOs, and so on. Our trade unions are involved in this process from the very beginning. Our municipalities, bigger and smaller town, cities, and so on. So this is our main, let's say, mindset to invite to participation all active players in our region. Next slide, please. During these discussions, we came to a conclusion that there will be two priority areas for the region. The first one is about excellence, because we would like to come back to the position of second biggest growing pole in the Czech Republic after this transformation is finished. So this is one way, mainly with regard to research, development, innovation, and so on. The second priority area is based on problem areas of post-mining land and its reclamation and new use. And these are two main, let's say, strategic priority areas. Next slide. We prepared our Just Transition Plan in 7 fields, which are in harmony with the recommendations by Just Transition mechanism. It is about business, research, development, new energy, and so on. You can see it on the right side of this slide. And we prepared 4 types of interventions. First one is about strategic projects. You can imagine the big transformation projects in this field. Another is called umbrella projects. It is about small projects open to individuals, small companies, small cities, small towns, and so on. The third one, thematic calls, it is something in the middle between this big and small. And besides the subsidies, we also prepared financial instruments to be used, especially with regard to productive investments and with regard to brownfield reclamation and new use. Next slide, please. In the second part of my presentation, I would like to give you just some examples of our strategic projects. Next slide. This one, please. The first 3 proposals of our strategic projects deals with the second, let's say, remark by Sander mentioned in the beginning, and it's about skills. The first project called Trautom, Competencies for 21st Century, it is focused on adult employees in companies, because we have a very strong sector of automotive, and this sector of automotive is very much impacted by Green Deal. transfer to electricity and clean mobility and so on. So we need to prepare our people, our staff in companies to be ready for this new development in this sector. Next slide, please. Another example of strategic project is focused on our young people, especially in high schools, in vocational and education and training. And we found the best example in Basque region of Spain about complete change of education in this sector. This example we started to pilot here in the region, and we have this project in our Just Transition Plan. And briefly speaking, it's about development of new content of education on one place in cooperation between companies and schools, and then quick dissemination to all VET schools in our region. Next slide, please. The third example is also focused on skills. In this case, it is about bachelor studies in our university, in one of our universities, and it is mainly focused on improvement of employment of entrepreneurial skills. We found inspiration in Finland, and we hope to introduce completely new way of education in the Czech Republic. Next slide, please. Here is one example of projects focused on to the excellence part of our priority areas. It's called Refresh, and here you can see 4 open living labs in the fields of our smart specialization in the region, and we would like to be leaders in these fields for the whole country. So this is mainly research, development, and application project. Next slide, please. Here you can see another type of project. It is about conversion of one of our coal mines to some new use. And next slide, please. Here is another conversion of another mine. The project called Eden Karviná or Eden Silesia is inspired by the project from United Kingdom, which should be, let's say, used as an example and used here in our region. And the last slide, it is about potential risks in implementation. Just now, we can see the one but quite important risk, and it is a risk of strict milestones to spend circa 70% of the allocation by the end of 2026, because there is a lot of problems related to this war in Ukraine, growing, let's say, inflation and so on. And there are some problems, and we see this as a potential risk, which we must somehow reduce. Perhaps if this will be not so strict, it will help us very much. So that's all. Thank you very much, and I am ready for the questions.
Thank you very much, Zdeněk. Very, very interesting. A lot of focus on human capital and people. I will then move a bit north to Lower Silesia, and Mr. Chalamet, the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Roman Chalamet. I'm the mayor of Wałbrzych, and I would first please first slide, and I will bring you some details about this region I'm representing, and I'm representing the so-called Wałbrzyski subregion in the southwestern part of Poland, close to Czech Republic and Germany. It's the history of 500 years of coal mining activities, and actually this Lower Silesia coal basin was closed 20 years ago, and with still see the typical post-carbon heritage of such a region. My predecessor mentioned about those negative effects of the coal mining, and this is a sub-region with more or less 700,000 inhabitants, and in terms of infrastructure and environmental and social challenges, is a high emission and decapitalized coal-dependent buildings, and the energy poverty of their inhabitants, which is in our opinion one of the greatest, one of the biggest burden of the coal past of the Wałbrzych sub-region. I would like to stress that almost 57% of total construction stock in the sub-region is come from before the war, the Second World War, which is a very important indicator in the situation of the quality of life and the situation in the construction and infrastructure in our sub-region. 90% of over 90% share of solid fuels, many coal in heating buildings in the sub-region, which is the typical burden of the post-coal mining area. The worst technical and energy condition of buildings elsewhere, which is a result of the age of those buildings, mainly built before the Second World War. We, as a leader of local government and the leader of local activists, I made the initiative in 2020 to create the social just transition plan, which would eventually and did contribute to the just transition plan created and generated by the Lower Silesia Voivodeship in Wrocław. And my appointment to this group of activists included leaders of the local communities, members of the local business, NGOs, members, and just residents and inhabitants of this region. And in September 28th of 2020, in Old Mine and of the Science and Art Center in Wałbrzych, 49 local government officials signed the so-called Declaration of Decarbonization of Wałbrzych sub-region, and which, if I would put one or two or three main goals to be reached by the implementation of the social just transition fund plan in Wałbrzych sub-region, is to make the decarbonization and thermal modernization of the infrastructure, particularly those for multi-families building. And we, as you can see in one of that slides, there is a photograph of those 49 local government officials signing the declaration of decarbonization. The main development goals presented in the Territorial Just Transition Plan for the Wałbrzych sub-region is the reduction of CO2, discussion with the representative of EU Commission, that having in mind that most of the families living in those multi-family residential buildings are included in the group of so-called energy poverty group, and the main laws of energy in such buildings make the goal to be achieved even more ambitious, because local government has decreasing in recent months and years in Poland, decreasing own incomes as a local government. So our contribution to this program of decarbonization and modernization and thermal modernization of those infrastructure, including multi-family buildings, is very difficult to achieve. Having in mind that the EU Commission suggested that recommended so-called returnable financial returnable instruments as a main goal in the second and third pillar of the Just Transition Fund mechanism, is really hard to afford in the reality of local governments in this sub-region, which is pretty heavily affected by the heritage of those 500 years as a coal industry region and the Lower Silesia Basin. So, in summarizing the presentation, I can see those slides, but I will simply continue to the main points of my presentation. We created our own social territorial just transition plan. We contributed it to the as a main foundation to the Territorial Just Transition Fund in Wrocław Voivodeship, Marshal Office in Wrocław. And the main point of our just transition, territorial just transition plan is to decarbonize and decarbonization of our region, thermal modernization of all those buildings, residential, business, and public buildings, just to reach the neutrality, or create the neutrality of our region. In finalizing this plan for our sub-region, which is once again one of the most challenging sub-region, not only in Lower Silesia but also in Poland as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we are moving west to the Netherlands, to Groningen. Selma, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to come and tell you something about JTF in our region, Groningen. I'll also tell you something on the basics on how we cope with JTF in the Netherlands. So let's start the presentation. Well, that's the opening slide, so to the next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. You can see that my region is Groningen. It's in the top of the Netherlands, right next to Germany. In the Netherlands, we are working on one JTF plan for several regions. There are 6 regions in the Netherlands, and we are making a plan for the 623 million euros on JTF support for the Netherlands. It's a cooperation between the regions and the central government, so we're working all together, making the right plans and get them approved. For the Northern Netherlands, the largest part of the JTF is planned. It's 330 million. It's for the province of Groningen and the city of Emmen, right in the south. You can see it on the orange dot. Next slide, please. So, why are we a JTF region? Well, first of all, there's a gas extraction in Groningen, and it's going to be stopped much earlier than we first thought of. Of course, it's because of the climate. We have to go close down on gas extraction, but also the last couple of years we are facing safety issues. The gas extraction is causing earthquakes in the northern of Netherlands, and well, houses are damaged, and yeah, people are threatened in their safety because of that. So that's one very big reason why we are going to be JTF region. Secondly, we heavily depend for our economy on the industry. Fossil fuel based industry, process industry. One of the large reasons is because of the gas extraction is very close by. So it's both for energy as for the use of the raw materials and the carbon dioxide which it is giving to us. So that's why a very large community of industry is based with us. So we're facing a few transitions closely related to JTF on energy, on industry, raw materials, and the labor market. That besides other transitions we're also facing, such like in agriculture, health, and digitalization. Now, we're working on all those issues and all those transitions. We work together in the Northern Netherlands, so also our colleague provinces in the Northern Netherlands. So we have a smart specialization strategy, and also because of the gas extraction has to close, we have also a national program Groningen. And that's a very large fund from the central government, also being used for socio-economic measures we have to take. Well, 20,000 jobs will be affected by this climate transition in our regions. The labor market concerns workers primarily living in the whole of the Northern Netherlands. So it's a North Netherlands issue about the labor market, but the JTF region really is the province of Groningen and the city of Emmen. Well, jobs being affected means 3,000 direct job losses due to closing down the gas extraction, but 17,000 jobs are being threatened if necessary measures and investments cannot be taken or will be done by the companies. But also other skills and competences have to be developed by the labor market. Companies have to find new markets for their products. So there's a lot to be done in our region. And this all has to be done in a region which is relatively vulnerable in socio-economic prospect, considering other Dutch regions. Next slide, please. The partners we work together with, well, as already stated, central government, there are two departments concerned, the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy and the Ministry of Social Affairs and Employment. They are centrally coordinating in the Netherlands the JTF program. The others are other regional governmental partners, and within those regions we work closely together, the province, but also the labor market regions we have here in the Netherlands, and those are the more local municipalities. Besides that, of course, the regional stakeholders, so we are involving the employers, social partners, knowledge educational institutions, our regional networks and business ecosystems, and of course the youth. We are involving them both in the planning, the strategy, as in setting up the program. and we want them to be involved also during the implementation. Next sheet, please. Well, a little bit more in detail, which sectors are being affected by the climate transition. First of all, of course, the gas mining industry. So that consists of extraction, production, distribution, and the trading of natural gas. Secondly, it's the industry, mostly chemical process industry. They are established in our region due to the close by gas. So that's very obvious. Indirectly affected are all the companies related to the gas mining and the industry. So providers, suppliers, maintenance companies. You can figure out how far it can go. So companies depending very much on the gas mining and the industry. Next sheet, please. Well, what are the consequences for our region we're facing? Of course, already stated the threat of job loss and actually job loss. We need other processes and applications for the transition to renewable energy and sustainable raw materials. So investments in product chains has to be done. And we need the labor who's going to work with it to be reschooled, reskilled. There's a lot of innovation which still has to be developed to make this transition. And also there's a knowledge and new competences are needed. So especially in schooling, the labor market, a lot has to be done too. Next slide, please. What is our strategy? Well, we will focus on 3 tracks. The first we call New Economic Perspective, which focuses on renewing the economy, vitalizing the economy. Of course, we now have a fossil-based economy, so new partners has to be involved to get the modern economy we need, and we have to strengthen the knowledge and the innovation system. The second track we call the Green Perspective. In this track, the necessary investment has to be done in the production facilities, but also we have to develop new businesses to seize the opportunities for our region that arise from the climate transition. For example, we are right next to sea, so solar parks are arising in the North Sea. We are a good place for hydrogen developments. The third track, that's what we call the social human capital and social perspective. And that is about ensuring and investing in our human capital. So we have to have sufficient and the right personnel in the future on the right place also, and ensuring that everyone can participate in our community. Well, of course, you all know the slogan from JTF, make sure no one will be left behind. Well, that's what we absolutely subscribe to. Next sheet, please. Then the planning. Well, our plan and our operational program is being admitted to the Economic Commission. We're now waiting for their first reaction and observations on it. During the coming months, we will cope with the observations we get, and we hope to start our program with the first calls in September. But we know that's the shortest term possible, so we hope the process will continue very well. Otherwise, we hope before the end of this year to start. So, last slide. What are our challenges? Well, it's hard work to make the plan and to get it approved, but also, as you all know, in JTF, in the first years we have to commit the largest part of the budget. So every month we lose on the approving process is a month, and well, it's very crucial for us to start as soon as possible. Another concern or challenge is controlling the technical execution costs of the JTF. So that's why we are already started with making a very smart and efficient programming. So we're, of course, trying to make the right calls so we can count on good applications. But also trying to be very smart in the technique. How can we process the application as efficient as possible? Well, since the first challenge stated, we are already starting with helping and advising stakeholders with their application. So this summer we are considering to already start to communicate widely with the program and the calls we want to start this year. Of course, with a clear disclaimer on the approval of the program by the European Commission. But we feel we cannot wait until we have the approval in our pocket. So that was my explanation and on the Groningen JTF plan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Stiel Augesen. I'm project director and team leader at the Green Hub Denmark, which is a public-private partnership situated in North Denmark. And I'm here today to inform you a little bit about how we have dealt with the Just Transition mechanism and the dialogue we have had with the Danish Business Authority during the whole process. And I have a small presentation also for you that I would like to share with you so that you can see some of the perspectives that we see in North Denmark on this. As mentioned, the Green Hub Denmark is this private-public partnership platform focusing very much on test and demonstration of new green technologies. And in that respect, we have around three key sayings that we have. So if you take the next. We are this partnership, and what we do and focus on is first and foremost to build partnerships for green transition and innovation, in the respect that we very much have a focus on how we can create jobs and also mitigate the climate challenges at the same time. And in doing this, it's very much about testing and demonstrating new innovative solutions, looking into sustainable business models, but also how we can create the right environment for testing and demonstrating solutions that can benefit and go into the very ambitious Danish climate goals of having a 70% reduction target by 2030. And in this respect, we have very large perspectives and ambitions, also using the Just Transition Fund for how we can build partnerships to look into how the funding can find applicable good ways of being used and spent in Northern Denmark. So next, thank you. So the whole reason why Northern Denmark is on this list, you can see here, if you press, we'll have a little circle about around North Denmark. So we're situated here in the middle of Scandinavia. And the choice of Northern Jutland is justified by the fact that we have a very, very large cement concrete factory. It's actually located right outside my window. If I look out here, I can see it in the horizon. And this has put us on this list. So we both see this, of course, concrete is an element that needs to be produced, and it will the production of it will not lower. We will see more concrete being used, but it can of course be done in a very green way. So we have here the single largest emitter of CO2 in Denmark, 2.3 million tons per year. I think number 2 on the list of private companies emits around 200,000 tons per year. So we have a factor of around 11-12 times as much emission here. Also, if we look at the Danish 70% reduction targets in total, it's actually around 21-22 million tons per annum. So that means that a large share of this actually comes from one single point source. But we also see it as an advantage for us, because if we can capture this CO2 and create it into new products, maybe even electrofuels, part of it comes from biogen sources. So that means that we can create businesses. So instead of seeing it as a disadvantage, we can use it for creating plastics, we can use it for creating electrofuels, we can use it for refrigerants, we can use it in, if you have the purity of it, maybe into food and beverages. So in that respect, the applicability of it is very, very large. So of course, we look into the structural changes to address some lower CO2 emissions could pose a risk and have negative consequences for the workers. But we actually believe that by looking into means of capturing this CO2, we could build on the benefits of having it. So even though that we are intensive, we also see ourselves as a benchmark and as a first mover for technologies in providing solutions that can use CO2. Of course, some of it needs also to be stored after having been captured. But for this CCUS, as we call it, there are very, very large perspectives, both on the climate side, but also on a job creation side. Next, please. The plan for allocating of this funding in a Danish context is done together with the Danish Business Authority, and these around approximately 90 million euros is so far divided into 5 different pots. And the first one is about the pyrolysis, meaning that you will create biochar in an environment of very low, without oxygen and very high temperatures. This can be very important for the agricultural sector, because this biochar can also be used as a fertilizer afterwards, and actually is a scene of a mean to utilize or capture the CO2. Also looking into local value chains, for instance, the CCUS lighthouse in northern Denmark that I'll present in my next slide. There are quite some of the funding will be allocated for bid rounds or call for applications within this field. Also, the JTF has a focus on our local lighthouse, of which Green Hub Denmark is the main operator for this lighthouse that contains around 54 companies and stakeholders in and around North Denmark, and where we are starting up these days on the project. Further, there will be an investment scheme targeted for innovative technologies within Power-to-X and hydrogen, so very important, and also the SME sector, where we have ongoing programs where we can see that this could benefit from prolongation. So all in all, we have been very satisfied also with the process of and the dialogue that we've had with the Danish Business Authority on how this money or this funding is being very well spent. Next, please. So this is our lighthouse projects, where we have created the foundation for CCUS in northern Denmark. So actually, the whole setting or reason why we have looked into this is, of course, some of our geological structures in and around North Denmark. We have some of the most suited areas for storing gases in our underground. And as I said, we had the single largest emitter of CO2 from Aalborg Portland, which is right in the middle. Instead of spending some of this money purely on Aalborg Portland and how we capture that CO2, if we should capture it all, it would require around 500 to 600 million euros. So in that respect, the funding coming from the Just Transition Fund and the ongoing Lighthouse funding, which is also EU funding under the EU REACT program, we see that we would rather start collecting and capturing both biogen and fossil CO2 from 9 different sites, coming both from biogas production, but also looking into the maritime sector. And if we press once, then we can see we will investigate how we can pipe some of this CO2, even together with the hydrogen, and creating a network parallel for both hydrogen and CO2. We look into a very important aspect here about what we call sector coupling or sector integration, because these processes of capturing the CO2 is very high requirements on heat and of course also electricity. But the integration between the Danish district heating system and such a new potential network that we could foresee also and are in dialogue with our network operators on how it should look like, it's quite important to look into this. And here comes in the Just Transition Fund. I can be an important player, maybe to start with on a microgrid scale, and look into how could we create microgrids in and around some of these clusters that are mentioned here. And the good part is that we also have these structures underground. You have this called the near shore CO2 storage, where some even pessimistic calculations shows that we could store maybe 500 million tons of CO2 in these reservoirs. So it's very, very important that we look into and take the advantage of how can we use this money, create a good pipeline, but also a long-lasting vision on ensuring, keeping and creating new jobs while also mitigating the climate impact that we have seen. So in that respect, we're actually positive about being on the list of high emitting regions or carbon intensive regions. So 9 mini lighthouses of different focus. We have high expectations on how we, by of course also the Just Transition Fund, can extend and go even further with some of these, investing in machinery, equipment, but also having the right decision support to take these large investment decisions. And the good part is also that it creates jobs not only with the workers that should, for instance, let's say, work on the sites, ensure the piping in between, but also from the social sciences and humanities perspective, there will be some issues about how and where do we store this CO2. There will be some communication to the public. There will be lawyers working on these declarations, but a lot of engineering, a lot of craftsmen will be working on this. We are quite sure that CCS in itself, for instance, according to some Danish investigations or reports, show that around 8,000 new jobs can be created just within this field, and that is just part of these. So next, please. We have, as part of our Lighthouse project, started to map the Danish CCUS system, also looking into capture, transport, usage, and storage. So these are just some of the companies and institutions, consultancies that we are in dialogue with, and in creating these partnerships that can bid for the Just Transition funds, and ensuring that we have the right capacity, also working closely together with clusters and consultants and universities in this respect. To ensure that we create a good platform. And this is where we see our Lighthouse project as a good continuation and foundation for creating even further impact. So the next. And this is the need for green labor that I talked about. This report mentions that around 290,000 full-time equivalents are needed to reach the 70% reduction goals mentioned by the Danish government, or target. And this is quite a lot. So meanwhile, we also look into how we can spend the money well in partnerships in line with, of course, the Sustainable Development Goal number 17. We also look very much into where do we get this labor from? How do we educate people to be even more ready, having the right skills, also to ensure the green transition? And for that, also Green Hub Denmark plays a significant role together with our partners, of course. So for us, it's very important that the Just Transition mechanism and the funding that comes along with it is well spent on both infrastructure analysis, but also looking into how can we reskill, educate, train next generation of green workers and green labor. So in total, to sum up, we are very happy to be part of the list. When we first saw it, it was not mentioned to be a positive thing for us to be a part of this 100 or 98 most polluting regions, but we see it hugely as an advantage and will do our utmost to create the best possible projects, act as a benchmark also because we know that this climate reduction goal is among the most ambitious in the world. So we want to live up and show the whole world that they can mirror and look to our solutions when we need to do this together in the European Union. So I think that was the last slide from my side. You're very welcome to contact me both by email, but also find me on LinkedIn, and then or follow Green Hub Denmark. And in this respect, we just look forward to get things going. So thank you for your time.